Armored Core 6 is going to be a lot more like Armored Core and less like Soulsborne games, and for those who may be newer to FromSoftware games, this is important information I'm going to be kind of reacting to and combing through an IGN interview. There's two different articles. There's one that sort of talks about how this is not going to be like Soulsborne games, but then there's another one about the boss battles and what they're going to be like. So you need to kind of listen to both parts of this to get the full scope. If you like this kind of content, especially live discussion format content, make sure and hit subscribe and the bell button so you don't miss my content. So let's just look first at this. Armored Core 6 looks to be more Armored Core than Soulsborne. Kat Bailey writing this for IGN. Now, she starts off simply by saying, listen, that this is the older title here, right? Armored Core has been around for a long time, far longer than Demon Souls and Dark Souls. And a lot of people might not know that, so they're just going to see a new FromSoftware game and get kind of excited, okay? With the Soulsborne subgenre becoming such a dominant part of FromSoftware's brand, it's easy to wonder whether Armored Core will follow suit, especially you see now Soulsborne and Souls-esque and Souls-like being used to describe games. Will it be Sekiro with giant robots? Will it take place over a large open world? Right now, the answer to both of those questions seems to be no, though there is some nuance to that comparison. So right here. No, we've not been making a conscious effort to try to direct it towards more Soulsborne type gameplay, says FromSoftware president Miyazaki, who provided the concept for the game. He said the essential direction of Armored Core was to go back and take a good look at the core concept of Armored Core and what made that series special. So we wanted to take the assembly aspect, assembling and customizing your own mech, your AC, and then being able to exact a high level of control over the assembled mech. So we wanted to take those two core concepts and re-examine those in our modern environment. So this is not meant to feel like a Souls game in a mech, and they made that effort. They're not saying it's not, but they didn't try to say, oh, we need to fit this in the Soulsborne feel. In practical terms, that means retaining many of the elements that have defined the series through the years, features like its granular mecha customization and its 1 versus 1 arena mode. Its most readily available Soulsborne elements are apt to be its powerful bosses, a FromSoftware staple, and its dark setting, the latter of which was already part of Armored Core's identity. So it's going to be dark and foreboding. There should be really big boss fights, but it's not going to feel necessarily like a Soulsborne game in the rest of its aspects. It also features a posture system of sorts, which director Yamamura, a veteran of Dark Souls and Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice, says it works by, quote, continuing to attack even the strongest enemy. The force of impact can break the enemy's posture and inflict a large amount of damage. Think of it something like holding up a shield and absorbing damage until you're forced to relent. When Armored Core stands apart, or where Armored Core stands apart, is in its focus on ranged weapons over swords and melee weapons. Yamamura acknowledges as much in our interview, though he also points out that Armored Core features some nice melee options. So it will feel like a bit of a departure there as well. Both Yamamura and Miyazaki resist simple comparisons to Soulsborne games. That's probably kind of annoying. That's being a victim of your own success, right? Like, their games are so successful, everybody's going to want to compare them to the existing titles. Miyazaki is firm in saying that customization is its main focus, and Yamamura says that there are no elements directly referring to Sekiro. Nowhere is that more evident than in the decision to go with a mission-based design, which connects it directly to its predecessors, versus the more open structure of Elden Ring and its ilk. So it's not going to be this open, sprawling area. Doesn't sound like it's also going to be the aimless feel of games like Sekiro and Dark Souls, where they don't really tell you where to go. You can kind of get lost, you can kind of wander into an area and get your head taken off. This will be more mission-based, which will probably give it a more linear feel. We felt that the mission-based structure was a benefit for this because it allows you to choose and customize before each sortie. At the very least, the tempo, the pace at which the player is able to move across the world and traverse the map, this is a very big aspect in how you approach this design, said Miyazaki. I think one of the big appeal points of the previous Armored Core games is having this freedom to choose how you're going to move across the map and how your choices are going to affect your mobility and your ability once you're actually in the level. This is the format we wanted to choose this time, and this is where we wanted to put our focus. So that will give it a very different feel if you're familiar with the other titles and how they typically flow with movement and exploration. Miyazaki, of course, got his start with the Armored Core series before eventually going on to direct Demon Souls, so he knows it's better than most. He knows the series better than most. Armored Core's main opportunity may lie in utilizing FromSoftware's enhanced resources to produce a graphically ambitious experience. Miyazaki himself admits that he's jealous of the team today who gets to make Armored Core 6. He says, I wish we had that sort of leverage back in the day. Obviously, it's going to be bigger and, probably better than the old titles as far as boss sizes and arena sizes for the fights. That is something that I think will lend itself to the mech environment. You need that space. You need those places to go. I love the Into the AM ad right in here. By the way, use code Lono over there. I do work with them, and you can use my code on their site. They have great shirts. Obviously, the mecha theme of Armored Core means we are portraying these enormous hunks of steel, and we're supposed to imagine how these things would move and how they'd be put together, the various joints, how they all sort of move in conjunction with one another, and how we make this look cool in a gameplay sense as well, says Yamamura. So, this is something that we're able to apply resources to. Obviously, the metallic texturing of these things and the sound design as well, we're able to use Foley, I'm not sure what that word is, to get some realistic sounds to apply to these mechs. There are a lot of areas that we're able to apply these resources and modern thinking as well. That may be the crux of what is driving FromSoft to make Armored Core 6. It may have found untold riches in making games like Elden Ring, but it hasn't forgotten its beginnings. Essentially, what they're saying here is the ability to make a world the size of Elden Ring probably influenced this game, and yet it won't play like Elden Ring. Pending the first full gameplay reveal, Armored Core seems to be fully set on being an Armored Core game with all of that entails. It also keeps the number even keeping the number despite having a new story. Armored Core is the reason anyone reading this tweet got to play Dark Souls, developer Doc Burford wrote shortly after the reveal. Now, you might be wondering, well, if I'm a Soulsborne fan, am I going to enjoy this game? Well, you might. So you're going to want to listen to this part about the boss battles, because that's something that Souls games are known for. Big, huge, awesome boss battles. So in this interview, Matt Perslow's breaking out some comments here. So this is from Yamamura again. Boss battles are the highlight of the game in this title. The essence of the battles, in which the player reads the enemy moves and then plays games with them, is of course provided, as is typical of FromSoftware. In this title, both the enemy and your own machine are aggressive and violent in their attacks. We are developing the game so that players can enjoy the dynamic and intense boss battles that only mechas can offer, along with the unique aspects of Armored Core, such as how to assemble the right parts and take on the strongest enemies. So it does sound like that customization that Miyazaki talked about is going to play a pretty big role in tackling the boss fights. One boss fight may go better than another depending on how you have yourself built, and I'm sure you can go to wiki guides and Reddit to figure out the best builds for certain fights. Despite these massive boss battles, FromSoftware's Miyazaki explained in an exclusive interview with IGN that the studio has not been making an effort to try to make Soulsborne gameplay. We already read that interview, right? In other words, don't expect Armored Core to just be sci-fi Souls-like. I think it's good to get out in front of this, by the way. You don't want all these people that have played Elden Ring, Sekiro, and Dark Souls to expect that in a mech suit. Instead, the emphasis still seems to be on highly customizable mecha. Still, it's very exciting to imagine how different robot builds can be tailored to each colossal boss encounter. So, big, intense, probably challenging boss fights. It is FromSoftware, but customization seems to be the drum they are banging on. Your mecha will be your mecha. Your approach will be your own. But you also are not going to have that mindlessness, that lack of linear direction. That was something that always kind of made me get a little frustrated, I will admit. I walked away from a couple of Souls games because I felt like they weren't telling me anything. Dark Souls 3 and Sekiro were linear enough, as was Elden Ring, that I was able to have a really good time with those games. But this will be more mission-based. It sounds like you're going to kind of know where you're going, how to get there, and then it's going to be focusing on these large fights that will go great or poorly depending on how you kind of have yourself built. I want to know what you think in the comments below. Is this encouraging? Is it worrying? Are you kind of discouraged? Are you like, oh man, I thought it was going to be another sort of Soulsborne-esque game? This sounds like a game that I might enjoy because of the boss rush element. It might feel more like a boss rush instead of like the wandering, I have no idea where anything is. But it also might be something that I don't enjoy because it's going to center around mecha combat, which that's not something that I really have a history with. Let me know what you think in the comments below. As always, check out my live streams. Make sure you're subscribed so you're here for those discussions. That way I can see you in the next video.